We're live.
Good morning, everybody. This is John Svielka from GAI Insights with our Gen AI news briefing. I come to you today from the Harvard Business School. We are participating in a conference here on generative AI and AI. Hence the different background. I'm here in beautiful Spangler Hall. And we've got quite a bit to cover today. And we've got a lot of our analysts. We have Tim and Luda, Adam, and Ankash and David. So really looking forward to it. We have interesting set of things, everything from rap music through a brand new model that Microsoft's putting together that is not OpenAI. So with that, let's, Ankash, go ahead and start us off with the MAI-1 Microsoft model.
Thanks, John. So the first one that we have for today is from Microsoft. So Microsoft is working on MAI-1, its own 500 billion parameters model to rival Google and OpenAI's large language models.
Well, that's great. Luda, what do you think of this?
Yeah, it's an interesting news, isn't it? And I would say not non-expected. I think Microsoft has been thinking about it way back when, but now they have a leader from Inflection, and this is an announcement. There's nothing out there yet to test, to look at, and they are just saying that they will have a large server group and the computing resources to do that. So interesting effort. I think it is important for our audience to know, because this will spur more of the rivalry in the models creation.
Yeah, totally agree on important. And I think it'll be interesting to see the performance of this one, because it's got a lot of parameters, but it's about half as much as GPT-4. But, we've made a lot of progress over the last year in smaller models being more performant than they were in the past. So I'm really interested to see if this gets to kind of GPT-4 level. And from the article, it seems like they're not sure how it's going to perform either. And based on how that plays out is how much we'll see probably them push this forward and give it a lot of attention.
Well, I'll go along with important, but it's marginal to me. David, I think we should congratulate Microsoft's PR firm for getting, front page news, if you will, of something that is a long ways from even knowing what it's going to be. I think, but I will go with important both because Microsoft is such a critical player to most AI leaders, and because this is the first baby of Mustafa, who does have an incredible reputation between Google DeepMind and Inflection. So it's more than the average product announcement in both of those senses. So I think it's marginally important because it's so early.
Yeah, and I don't know whether it's worth speculating on how the relationship with OpenAI would go and how they're going to handle it. They're certainly not going to be very simple.
One thing of interest I saw there in the article was the comment that, among other things, it was trained on text output from GPT-4, right? And honestly, I think OpenAI is going to be just fine with it, because they're going to be onto GPT-5, and just running laps around this thing, sort of staying ahead of everyone else. So Microsoft will still probably stay very close to them in that relationship at the same time.
Yeah, Microsoft has enormous research, has been doing other models for a long time, and obviously hired the Inflection team. And as I'm sure that the kerfuffle from last Thanksgiving didn't help matters, but they don't like being dependent upon somebody else. So I'm sure they've been planning this for a while.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see going forward. I think it's safe to assume OpenAI needs help on the productization side, right? And you would think Microsoft in the background would be providing some help on that, but I increasingly think that they're not providing that much help on that. And you wonder, as these two seem to start to go further apart, which may also be designed because regulators are poking around too, remember, like all over the world. So they may be forced to have a different relationship that's not as close.
Yep.
So what happens to OpenAI once Daddy stops helping them will be interesting.
Yes.
Alrighty. So we're going to land on important here. On to the next one. Ankash.
So the next one comes from UPS. So UPS is using GenAI to deliver better customer service.
Yeah. I rated this thing as important. I know a bunch of us put it as optional. I thought it was a pretty in-depth thing about Mira. I think that's how you pronounce it. The assistant, is handling over 50,000, emails a day that they see, and really helping support the customer service agents. Bit of a puff piece. Not a lot of, there's not a lot of financial impact in terms of specific numbers. But I thought, you have a global brand. It's in production, and they're looking to go to other parts of the organization. So I thought this was useful for our AI leader and put it in the important, not optional category, but not essential.
Yeah, I understand. We can go between optional and important. I thought important also, John, because it's a use case, but what was interesting is how they implemented it and what are the things they added to the regular chatbot in the customer space. And how they use the data and what the various features they've added gradually. So the gradual implementation, the smart use of data were the features that attracted me, and I thought it might be worth putting important on it.
I'm going for important myself. I know, because I think this is another one of those what I call back pocket articles. You want to just file this one away, and when somebody says, "Why are you doing this crazy Gen AI stuff?" you say, "Well, take a look at what UPS has done."
Right. Yep.
So
have to get it right.
I'll be the voice of optional. AT&T Wireless was doing this over 20 years ago using Bayesian networks. They didn't say how many of the responses were automated. All they've said is that they're using AI to streamline efficiency and help with handling customer emails. That's a nothing burger in my book, frankly. It seemed very unimpressive, and it's sort of paving the way for more generative AI, but I don't really see them doing much of anything, frankly.
Adam, I think there were some numbers. I can look. There were 52,000 emails that were.
Yeah, it says some of the roughly 52,000 are handled automatically.
They did not provide any details on the number. They did provide some productivity numbers, I thought, but not nothing on the, it could have been 5 emails, right?
I see. I thought it's 50+%. Okay.
50% speed.
It is, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It was 50% speed up of the
50% reduction in
50% productivity boost, but they did not say how many of them were used.
But we were auto suggesting responsive to agents and auto replying over 20 years ago at AT&T Wireless. So it seems like good marketing, but not a lot of really.
I will tell you, here's the thing. That's true, and I worked with other companies that did it too back then, but it never became a thing. That is, there's not most customer service agent software systems don't do that in any significant way. So this is significant because it's changing the way CSRs are going to interact with their systems.
Right, and
Alrighty,
I agree with Tim Adams. See, there is a loop of that they integrated, that people were checking on the AI agent to see whether the response was correct. They will eventually take it away when they see that when there is enough of the guardrails. So I agree with Tim that this will result in a real productivity gain.
Alrighty. Well, in the spirit of Napoleon Bonaparte, I will arbitrarily use democracy, and here we will go for the Democratic vote. All right, we're going to go for important.
Yep. So the next one is around how GenAI was used to generate Randy Travis's voice back.
All right. Very emotional. Poor guy had a stroke in 2013. Now he's back in the airwaves. What if?
Yeah,
let's see.
and I think we were going to
wind up on this one.
This is me, and I think we were going to include the next one as well, since it's on.
Okay, great. Yes, yeah. Ankash, if you could just take us through the next one as well, so David can opine on both.
Sure, John. So the next one also comes from the music field, where Drake versus Kendrick Lamar is playing out, and AI seems to be playing the role of a spoiler.
Yeah, so this is an interesting. I like that you pulled these two articles on Kaj. It's kind of the two sides of the coin. The Randy Travis use case is very inspirational. He had a stroke, as John mentioned, over 10 years ago, couldn't sing anymore. So he actually worked with the producer to, he wrote a new song and somebody else sang it. And then they converted that person's voice into Randy's voice by using generative AI. They trained it on, I think, 40 plus recordings of his from the past. So it was super cool. He's got a new song out that he wouldn't otherwise have been able to put out. And then you got the flip side of the coin here, where there's this dispute, I guess, going back and forth between Drake and Kendrick Lamar about kind of who's the best, and they throw disses at each other using raps back and forth. And sure enough, somebody injected one into the kind of the battle that was AI generated and didn't come from one of them. So for the AI leader, I kind of feel like it's optional. We've pointed out in the past through other incidents, such as when there was somebody at a company that, gave up like $50 million. I don't know, it was something crazy. I can't remember the number because they got a call that was from supposedly the CEO or something, and basically gave up sent a bunch of money somewhere, and it was a fake voice. So we've pointed out that this can be a problem, right? That deep fakes of voices could be serious liability for companies. So, I mean, this one I think is inspirational. So I gave it an I for inspirational on the Randy Travis side, but I give it an optional for the AI leader.
Yeah.
What other folks think?
Yeah, optional.
Where are you, Tim?
I agree.
Optional?
I think, look, this is more of a philosophical issue of we already have problems with the overabundance of information and generation of misinformation, and this is just an indication of the fact that we're not paying much attention to it, and we're going to get overwhelmed by it more and more. But that's not an issue for the day-to-day AI leader who's got bills to pay.
Yeah.
Adam, you good with optional? All righty, optional it is. All right. Interesting, but optional. All right. Next, Ankash.
Yep. So the next one is from OpenAI and Stack Overflow. So they have signed a deal where Stack Overflow will provide its data for OpenAI's models.
Yeah, Timothy, what did you think about this deal here?
Well, I think this is important, actually, for a couple of reasons. One is Stack Overflow was the poster child for the problems of generative AI undermining current environments, and the conundrum of, well, Stack Overflow is where the content that these things get trained on is generated by actual humans. And if you undermine it by using it to train them and then getting rid of it, then you are ultimately signing your own death warrant if you're a large language model, because there won't be any data left to train on. And so this is interesting because they have now signed a deal, and this is an interesting legal issue here, because this is more and more setting the trend that there's going to be some sort of a détente between content sites and these large language models, where the content sites are going to start trying to effectively license the content and pay them off before they get sued in court all over the New York Times. So I think this is an important moment here, because Stack Overflow was such a critical site in the early days of this stuff.
Okay, so we have a vote for important.
Yeah, it's super interesting from a market development perspective, right? As Tim pointed out, Stack Overflow was like the go-to place for developers for help, and it noted in the article that the traffic to the site has dipped since GitHub Copilot and all of these other kind of code generation assistants have come out. So it's kind of like Stack Overflow bending, to the trend and feeling, okay, can't beat them, join them kind of thing. And, we're seeing the publishers that sign up with OpenAI and others. And there's been a lot of interesting op-eds and such lately kind of debating this, relationship between the content providers and the LLMs and how it's going to play out. And, increasingly people are saying, if you ban these LLMs from scraping your data, are you kind of like signing your own death warrant, right? Because you may become irrelevant because you're not going to show up in their searches, and search is moving there. So all of this is really interesting, right? Beginnings of like how this may play out in a couple of really important spaces like search and just content generation in general.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating from a branding perspective. Nobody's done, the Intel Inside or NutraSuite Inside, kind of ingredient branding for content, which if I were Stack Overflow, I would try to get something like that done. But whatever, they've done the deal. So, as you say, they may become irrelevant. Okay, so we're going for important on this one? Yes? No?
Yeah, I
Yes.
can back
Okay.
just for
Alrighty.
that, this is one of the major vendors in the software development space.
All right, important. Ankash, Alphabet-owned Intrinsic.
So this one is from the robotics arena. So Nvidia has partnered with Intrinsic, which is owned by Alphabet, for a new robotics platform.
Adam, what do you think here?
It's interesting news. I don't think it strays enough into the generative AI space specifically. They talk about foundational models to create workflows for robotic arms, but it just, I guess, wasn't clear enough to me where this would sit in the Gen AI landscape specifically versus more emerging technologies. So I rated it as optional. It's good that Nvidia is doing that. It's interesting to see them.
They said it was a general purpose model that was trained on a bunch of images and could do both route planning and grasping without training. So it sounded like a generative AI thing to me, but maybe you're right. I didn't go back and read anything beyond this, but the article does say they trained it on hundreds of thousands of images, and it can do grasping and other kinds of robotic efforts without training. I thought.
Yeah, but it is
And
optional because it's just a vendor announcement for now.
Yeah, they haven't done anything yet.
It's true. I still it wouldn't move off optional for me. I agree, because it's too early. And it's also, we've seen this before. We've seen the Figure and a couple of the other robots that already are doing autonomous, using generative AI to do planning for their movements.
Yep.
And doing this kind of stuff. So the general trend is hugely important, in my opinion, where robots are reaching an entirely different level of articulation of their limbs and things. Unbelievable. But
yeah, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I guess I could clarify that it seems like it's machine learning. It's not generative AI, right? So maybe that's where I'm drawing that line.
It's hard to know, actually, but it's still an optional news, whatever it is.
Yeah,
still optional.
At the end of the day.
All right, we're going to go for optional, and we have our last shot here, Ankash, at a potential essential. We'll see if there's anything essential today. Hugging Face launches Lobot. Go for it.
So this one from Hugging Face is about an open source library related to robotics titled Lobot, and they have brought it out in the open for anyone to use now.
All right, we can give it an essential based on the name Lobot, which I love, but we're not going to do that. All right. Adam, we have you lined up for this one as well. What's your sense here?
I think given given Hugging Face's position in the market, and that this is completely open source and is going to pave the way for so much more acceleration of the development of these types of technologies, I gave it an important. I was kind of on the fence whether this was optional or important. It wasn't quite clear to me how much of an impact it's going to have yet, but I think it's going to be notable.
All righty.
I think, John,
it,
might have an essential. I'd like to make a case of essential, because this will move the robotics field way forward. When you have a library of agents and it's led by a person from Tesla who has been leading the robotics side in Tesla. So he knows what he's talking about. And all of these libraries becoming open will spur the development of robotics major league. So I think people in robotics should certainly know about it, though. So this is a must know. If
all
not,
right, we have a vote for essential.
It's hard to say it's essential, though, because first of all, I think it's important. I would give it an important because it's the first major open source thing we've seen. As you noted, they've got a pretty important person, at least by reputation, from Tesla leading the effort. It's Hugging Face, which is a major site for open source models. So all that's great, but it's just released. Nothing's been done with it yet. It's robotics, which, as we just said, are really important, but actually not to a lot of people, at least not right at the moment. So I would say it's important, but not essential, unless you're in the robotics field, and maybe then. And even then, it's just really early.
Well, the inclusion of the data sets too, I think, is big, right? They said they're starting with over 30 data sets that they're supplying, and they're giving a repository for more. I agree. It's hard to say essential right now. I mean, there are a lot of industries that are going to be looking into robots, though, when you think about it. I don't know. When Luda says essential, I want to just kind of go with it, but especially on robots.
No, I think Tim makes a good point. It's and it's a point of reason, right? It doesn't make sense for everyone, right? So maybe important.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd go for essential. I think I think robotics are not being paid attention to enough. And I get you, like, does a law firm care about robotics? No. Does a hospital? Yeah. A robot's going to be way more part of our lives. I think so. Does a real estate developer care about robots? They ought to when they're doing, new real estate.
Any company that ships,
I don't know.
Any company that ships things, right?
Well, not just ships things, but just all
Moves
kinds of
things.
MIT
atoms. Yep.
To your point,
I just think,
John, the MIT Technology Review, the last issue on the cover, it says robots are coming and they will help you everywhere.
I just think it's generative AI has just made it so much easier to do planning in non-familiar places, non-model places. That just, I think it's going to be in warfare. I mean, it's the DoD is going to spend a ton of money on this. It's going to advance it. Anyway, I'll go. All right, essential it is. All right, we got an essential. Woohoo! Hey, and Akash, what's up? What's our tote here?
He was probably waiting for you to weigh in on the final judgment before he could put up the slide.
This is true. All right. Well, interesting day. All right, we got UPS and Meet MAI is important. Wow, this is a pretty important day here. We've got 3 optionals with Randy. And by the way, the thing that Randy, I feel bad, but the song was really awful if you listen to it. Oh my God. Anyway, so we got optional in terms of impersonating singers. Alphabet owned Nvidia. Yeah, okay. But Hugging Face coming at us with all kinds of functionality. And the robot area with an ex-Tesla employee leading the charge. All right, with that, we have the end of our review today. Look forward to the review tomorrow. Any last words for our audience, folks? All right. Thanks, everybody. David, if you could take us out, that would be great.
All right. See you later, Raul.